Kyle here from All Media Reviews. Geez, Mocha, got these big claws. I need to trim them, but we're not good at trimming them. Um, Here to do a video on just a show that I love. I've talked about it a little bit. Maybe I did the television thing. I don't know when it was. I was doing my DVDs, ranking my TV. Maybe I didn't do it. I don't know. The passing of one George Wendt, from Chicago originally, but Cheers. So like growing up, um, our channel, like our NBC affiliate, 'cause Cheers was on NBC, of course, the network show. Um, and I didn't know about it when it first came on the air at all. I mean, I watched television, I watched sitcoms like Different Strokes and Dukes of Hazzard. That wasn't a sitcom so much, but kind of was, but it wasn't. But um, other Family Ties. Eventually, that was one of the more common ones. But um, our NBC affiliate would run the reruns of Cheers right after the news, right after the sports, and then right before the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, then later Jay Leno a little bit. But I I started to watch it. I don't know when it was, 87, 88. It's probably around the time that Shelley Long left, maybe a little before, a little bit after that. I mean, I always want to stay up to watch the sports. Then, I'm supposed to go to bed, like if I had homework to do, because I had to watch the sports. That was like the thing. And Channel 11, which is the NBC affiliate, Care 11, which is probably the most common one I watch. My parents watch some anyway. Um, so I end up watching Cheers a lot, and I just got sort of attached to it and the characters on it. And they would run them, and so I don't know how many episodes they had at that point, maybe 100, 100 some, close to 100 probably. I saw every episode. I don't know how many times. I don't know if they ever did a marathon, maybe once or twice, but they later did marathons on some of the like MeTV or like TV Land, that kind of thing, or USA Network. But and then the Rebecca period, of course, later, and then I was watching that like every week. It was on. Pretty much was that must see TV, the NBC stuff with the Brandon Tartikoff lineup. I think Family Ties was in there and the Cosby Show. But I mean, I didn't drink. I never had aspirations to drink beer, but it was more about the characters on Cheers. And it just became very memorable, very quotable, very not relatable exactly, but it was sharply written, great performances by a lot of the actors, and the characters were just it was just comedy. In some ways, even though I'd seen other shows before it was like the sitcom that made me a sitcom fan in some ways. In some ways, really. It also looked different. Like it didn't, the kind of camera and film they used looked different, almost looked like a movie. But so George Wendt, Norm character who played Norm, um, when I look back, even before I look back, but watching the show, well, I loved almost all the characters. Pretty much all the characters I loved. There wasn't a character on Cheers I did not really care for that bugged me. Cliff, you could say in some ways was a little repulsive, and like sort of like the nerdy type that I was. I could relate in some ways. Like there's me, but I didn't want to be represented that way. But he was pretty brilliant himself in a lot of ways. Carla, Diane. Diane was sort of a snob, and amongst the group she wasn't as connected, but she was the outsider. She wasn't at the bar right away, but really good performance by her. I really have appreciated. In fact, if choosing between the Diane and Rebecca periods, I actually prefer the Diane periods. Although Cheers is one of those rare examples of a show, and why it's one of my all-time favorite sitcom. It is my all-time favorite, really. That didn't really fall off when Kirstie Alley replaced Shelley Long as the Rebecca character. I mean, it was a different kind of character, but it worked. It worked a lot better than a lot of people would have expected it. So that's why Cheers is very rare. And like you didn't really have a fall off. You didn't really the Frasier and Lilith had a baby, but that didn't really compromise the show. Unlike a lot of shows when they have babies and kids on the shows that come in. My friend John's theory about a lot of shows like How I Met Your Mother and a few others, even on Family Ties to some small degree. Um, but or like what was it? Not Step by Step, but the Olsen twins. They were the babies right away, but then the two had kids later. What am I thinking of? Full House, but yeah. So George Wendt. So I concluded that. Well, I love Sam. Some of the other characters on there: Frasier, um, Cliff, Woody, and Coach. The Norm character kind of was the most consistently funny character. Like, not 100% of his lines in every episode, but I love the sort of less is more approach, and he was like um, very kind of nonchalant and just like he didn't let anything get to him too much in most cases, and I mean beyond the sort of good afternoon everybody norm everyone knows it for, but um, there's so many. I didn't think about this. It'd be good to like go through my top 5 or top 10 episodes. There's so many like I always think of the one with the cafe, that expensive restaurant, and I mean Norm specific episodes. Yeah, there's the one where he became he got to do the beer tasting, and the one where he's like painting Fraser and Lilith's house, and then later ends up back at Cheers after he's like laid up and stuff. I don't even know the names of the episodes, but um, he what was the one they're reading? Someone's reading Tale of Two Cities, and he has the line. He goes, "It was the best of times, or worst of times." And Ron goes, "Whoa, whoa, wait a minute, what? Which was it?" Um, but it's sad to see his passing. He was 76. The only thing I'll say about him is he always was. He never was thin. He was a little heavier set, but I mean, I don't know if he had like myself diabetes or something else. I kind of always kind of wondered how long he would be around. But he obviously wasn't young, but he wasn't that old. I wonder, what happened exactly. It's too bad he didn't live a little bit longer than that. But Kirstie Alley passed away a couple of years ago, and while she had, I mean, it's like her and Woody Harrelson probably have had the most sort of outside of Cheers success from a sort of mainstream in Hollywood and film, especially. Ted Danson's had some, but those two, Kelsey Grammer had Frasier, of course, but and he's done a few other things, but he didn't do. Kirstie Alley and Woody Harrelson probably had the most widespread, and Woody Harrelson's, I think he's been nominated for Academy Awards. I met him when he was filming Wilson here a few years ago, about 10 years ago actually. But Kirstie Alley, it's sad that she passed away a couple of years, 2022 actually, it was like December of 22. I was looking it up. Unfortunately, her sort of off-screen approach to some things, it kind of not it looked at her as not as favorable as much as I love the cast and the Cheers are of sacred ground. I mean, Nicholas Constanto passed away toward the end of the third season. It's too bad he didn't live longer. Although he always seemed like the elder statesman, but he was gone before I even probably had watched the show. But um, more of what I'm trying to say is that I have maybe a stronger like to this day connection fondness for George Wendt, not necessarily the character Norm any more than I would for Rebecca's character. But it's kind of that whole thing. I don't look at her like say like a Bill Cosby or something like that. Some of the stuff that came out about, but just sort of her. There's definitely actors that have just kind of their politics and that kind of stuff have come to the forefront, and the conspiracy theorists, and it kind of the art versus artist thing kind of can. There's a line that kind of gets crossed a little bit, but I still can watch Cheers. I don't know if I can really watch the Cosby Show anymore, despite there's a lot of other people on that show who were really good, and that show is a classic. But yeah, losing George Wendt, and he's like, I mean, outside of obviously Nicholas Constanto, he's the second one to pass away. Eventually, like Mary Tyler Moore, the whole cast is gone now. Basically, it's gonna happen at some point. Just like Deep Space Nine, my favorite show, also has lost a few people like Renee Auberjonois and Aaron Eisenberg. But no, it's sad to see George Wendt. He was also on Second City. He was on Fletch. I think of him for Fletch. He did do the Norm show, I guess, which I think I vaguely remember. He was like he was a talk show host talking about cars. He wasn't playing. I don't know. I thought it was the Norm, or maybe it was the George Wendt show rather. He wasn't playing Norm, but of course, he also got known for the part of the super fans bit with the Chicago sports fan. He's from Chicago, so that makes a lot of sense. Playing one of the Ditko worshippers. which is a hilarious bit. Him and Chris Farley are not around anymore, but he was on SNL several times. But I was listening to a podcast. It's called Everybody Where Everybody Knows Your Name with Ted Danson, Woody Harrelson. It's a new podcast, and they interviewed George Wendt a little less than a year ago. They're talking about stories and talking about how he was in Second City, which I was also learning that among many people that were in Second City, Shelley Long also was in it. That's a push, but I think that a lot of people think of Cheers probably more so for the Rebecca period, but I have a soft spot for Shelley Long, and if I'm given the choice between the two, I think I still would take the Diane character, as much as her character was a little more repulsive and sort of snobbish. I mean, Rebecca had a little snobbishness to herself as well, but I could see why some people didn't like Diane, but that was kind of her point. Her character wasn't supposed to be liked, even though she was trying to get people to like her sometimes, but she didn't compromise her ideals, and her comedy really worked in some ways, and her being sort of very intellectual. um, I mean, sometimes it was sort of putting Sam and some of the other people in the bar down, but I actually think it was really clever the way they made her character. Um, but yeah, she was part of Second City as well. Understanding why she left. Actually, she left because she wanted to raise her kids. It wasn't purely she wanted to. She had a deal where she was going to do more movies with like Disney or something like that. She wanted to do more movies, but also she had to raise her kids, and so the more I think about her leaving, I don't fault her. As much as it was, I know her career post Cheers was more hit and miss at best, in some ways nondescript. I totally understand it. Like Terry Farrell, Sarah Michelle Gellar, a lot of these actresses, especially and other actresses, have left Hollywood or gone on long breaks because of raising children. Zoe Deschanel now. Um, I think what's her name? What's her name from blonde actress that was in Mask. She also, but she's unretired now. She was retired. Um, but yeah, he George Wendt. After Cheers, I haven't really seen a lot that he did. He showed up on Frasier, and Frasier, I'm guilty of in that. As much as I love Cheers, I watched it some, but I never got attached to it, and so I probably haven't even seen half the episodes of Frasier. I've seen some of them, and Kelsey Grammer, not to the same degree as Kirstie Alley, but his politics have kind of come up at times too. But that wasn't the reason why I didn't watch Frasier. It just didn't have the same feel and I like the ensemble, but I didn't like them as much as Cheers. Um, but I actually now, because I know a lot, almost the whole cast, other than I think Kirstie might have been the only one that never appeared on Frasier. I didn't see all the episodes that the Cheers people show up on Frasier, and I should go back and try watching those. But but yeah, it's just weird. His background is interesting, that he didn't even want to be an actor. He didn't know what he was going to do with his life. He decided to go to Europe, and then he's like, well, I guess I could do this because all the other jobs I want to do, I don't want to do. Um, but he did improv with Second City, but it was really hard for him. But he learned how to do it. Um, but but as far as Second City 2, though, there's a 30-minute documentary that's on YouTube that someone did, but it's remarkable. Second City, it's the comedy troupe that predates Saturday Night Live, but Saturday Night Live wasn't improvised, but the number of people that were in it, they should do a more like proper, like full, like either documentary series or documentary about it, because there's just beyond the people that went on to SNL. There's just all these other people that were on it. Generation, they had many. It was like SNL, where they had people come into it and then go on to other things, but you get a new group of people. And SNL and SCTV, of course. That's kind of what it was. SCTV was Second City in a sense, but it was based in Canada. Second City, the comedy troupe, I believe, the live improv group, was based in Chicago, I believe. So, yeah, like Bob Odenkirk, and more recent, not more recent, but in the 90s, I think Colbert was part of it. And it's you think that actually the Kennedy Center honors, as much as it wasn't a television or movie thing, Kennedy Center should do to honor, but I don't know if there's one person that was really behind it all. I don't know, there's like a director, producer of Second City, but it's just long. It warrants it, because when you look it up, you don't realize how many people that went on to such big things were in Second City. So, like George Wendt and Shelley Long. George Wendt was on one episode. I thought it'd been more. One episode of Taxi, and that was the whole thing with Taxi was, it was James Burrows and the connection. I think Glenn Charles may have done some work on Taxi. They never did a crossover though. I don't know. Like Taxi ended like the first year that Cheers started, but it would have been interesting. But you had Rhea Perlman, who was married to Dan DeVito, of course, had showed up on Taxi, and Ted Danson had, I guess, as well. So it, when I started to get into Cheers, especially, then I learned more about the connection with Taxi. It's like, well, why don't we have more characters? Is it Cheers isn't technically a spinoff of Taxi, and Taxi I think was based in New York, but I don't know. Like you had Christopher Lloyd show up on Cheers, but like Tony Danza, some of the people never did show up on Cheers, but um, it would have been interesting for they did those remakes of shows. They did with no what's his name? It's gone, Norm Lear. But they should, Jimmy Kimmel should think about doing the same thing for Burrows. I don't know if any of his shows, maybe one or two of them was. I can't remember. He's got a long resume, James Burrows. But they did Cheers. Who would they cast? That'd be a good question. I should try to think of that. Who would they cast the different people? It would be hard to do. You could come up with some people that might do okay. I think those live adaptation episodes they remade were hit and miss. Some of them were pretty good. Some of them were eh. Facts of Life they did, and they did well, they did Different Strokes, Facts of Life, The Jeffersons, they did one or two others, but I don't know. The thing is, James Burrows and those people would want to do it, and then I don't know what episode they'd choose from Cheers. It'd be interesting, but or Taxi for that matter. They could do Taxi. But anyway, that's my spin. R.I.P. George Wendt. Let's hope we don't lose too many more of the people from my favorite show anytime soon, actually. But it's kind of hitting home a little bit that he was 76, so he wasn't young, obviously, but it's just sad to see, eventually the other than like Woody Harrelson, who was the youngest, these people may not be around too much longer, but we loved them one. We still have the episodes to watch and quote and everything like that. And so thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.